So can you hear me now? I'm so sorry. I just saw my comments and I heard that you cannot hear me. If you can hear me, please leave me a comment. If not, then I will do this broadcast over again. Okay, so everyone can hear me now. I am so terribly sorry about that. So to start over, the new presidential proclamation has been extended up until December 31st of this year. And what this does, I am so sorry, everyone. Thank you for bearing with me. So for those of you who did not hear anything, I guess it was everyone who didn't hear anything, the new presidential proclamation has been extended. And to go over, this affects persons who are outside the U.S. If you are already inside the U.S., and you've applied for a green card through your family member, then you're safe. Nothing will happen to you. But unfortunately, for those persons who are outside the U.S. in these categories, the issuance of immigrant visas is going to be suspended. So again, if you are a parent of a U.S. citizen, an adult child, which means that you're over 21 and your mom or dad is a U.S. citizen or green card holder, or you're a sibling of one of them or a spouse of an LPR, then this suspension does apply to you. So this has been extended up until December 31st. And the other thing that has been announced is that these three categories of visas are also going to be suspended. If you are already inside the US in these visa categories, then you are not affected. But if you are outside the US and you're seeking to come in with one of these visas, then it will not be issued to you. Now, there are some narrow categories for exceptions for persons who are outside the US in these categories. If you're seeking to come in, you already were issued this visa and you have it in your passport, and you also have a travel document such as an advance parole or a boarding foil or a transportation letter, and you're outside the US, then you will be allowed in. But again, if you did not, these are very, very difficult to get altogether. So if you are outside the US, you're waiting to come in on a J1, H1B, or L1 visa, you don't have your visa stamp in your passport, you don't have a transportation letter, then most likely you will not be able to enter the US. And come December 31st, if we still have a Trump administration in power, then I foresee that they're going to continue these travel restrictions and visa suspensions. Hopefully there will be enough pressure from the business community to lift these restrictions, because these three visas are work visas. They do supply a lot of US companies with workers. It's extremely important for the health of many American businesses that in turn help support many Americans to have these type of work categories. So anyway, so now that I've covered this visa suspension, I'll take a couple of questions. If you do have any questions, please let me know. Again, I'm extremely sorry about the audio problems. I apologize. There was so much good information that I was giving. I don't have time to repeat every single thing. But right now, if there are no more questions, then I'll talk about the new asylum work permit restrictions. Now, this is very, very troubling. Last year, USCIS, or the Department of Homeland Security, did publish a draft of a proposed rule that places some extreme restrictions on the ability of asylum seekers to get a work permit. And the whole purpose of these restrictions is to discourage people from applying for asylum. So to that end, they have really finalized some restrictions on the ability of asylum seekers to get work permits, and I'll talk about what some of these are. So this really applies to persons who have not yet filed for asylum or have not already received their work permit. If you have already received your work permit through asylum, then this next rule may not apply to you. So the main thing that you should be aware of is that the asylum clock has increased from 150 days to 365 days. So what this means is that all asylum all asylum seekers currently cannot even file for a work permit until 150 days have passed from the time that they file their asylum application until they are able to file their work permit or work authorization application. So currently the time is 5 months. 5 months is the current waiting period. But as of August 25th, this waiting period increases from 5 months to a full 1 year. And this is really troubling because this means that, on top of being able to get your asylum application in, which there have been many problems with recently because the asylum office has been rejecting many applications for very small things and causing people to lose time and to have to refile their applications all over again. Now, once your asylum application is finally received by the asylum office, then you have to wait a full 1 year as of August 25th. So this is really important for you to know. And the other main thing that this new rule does is that if you entered the country illegally with, absent good cause, then you are no longer eligible to receive a work permit through asylum, okay? This is another big deal because we know that many people flee their countries to escape persecution and torture, and they come to the US through any means that they can to save their lives and to save their families' lives. And now the government is saying that if you did enter the US illegally, then you will no longer be eligible to get a work permit, especially if you have filed for a work permit through the asylum category. So again, this applies to persons who have not been approved for asylum yet. And I do believe, although I could be wrong, I'll make an update later if I'm wrong. But if you have already received a work permit and you'll be filing for a renewal and you enter the country illegally, then this may very well prevent you from getting a work permit. So there are some more restrictions that were also announced yesterday for this new asylum work permit rule. Keep in mind that the other new thing that they have announced is that if you have a conviction of certain crimes, either in the US or outside the US, then also you will be disqualified from getting a work permit. So, the merits of, I think, I'm not going to discuss that right now, but it's very important for you to know, especially since persons outside the US who are fleeing persecution can sometimes be accused of crimes and convicted of crimes falsely as a method of political persecution. So it's really tremendous, this new rule. There are some other restrictions as well that I'm not going to go over, but those are the two new things that I wanted you to be aware of. Again, if you have filed for asylum or are seeking asylum or have a friend who needs to file for asylum, you should share this with them. This is very important news. Anyway, that's really it for all of my updates. Thank you again for joining me. Also, thank you for bearing with me with the sound issue. I have a few minutes left. If you would like to ask any questions or make any comments, please type them now. I have a comment here from Ajay Banger. Can we apply for asylum after 1 year, like 10 days over if we cross the border? So first of all, the deadline for filing for asylum is 1 year. If you enter the US on January 1st, 2020, you must make sure that your asylum application is filed and received by January 1st, 2021. So you have a full 1 year to file for asylum. So if you're 10 days over that, you can still file, but your asylum application will be denied if you cannot prove an exception to that 1 year filing deadline. And these exceptions include changed country conditions, a changed circumstance, or an exceptional circumstance that prevented you from filing before. So if you cannot prove that, you can always file your asylum application, but if you cannot prove those exceptions, then your application will ultimately be denied. So that's it. If there are no more questions, then I'll go ahead and end. If you need to contact my office, you can call me at 212-248-7907. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is my pleasure. Well, it's not really my pleasure to bring you these types of negative news regarding immigration that really is going to impact people's lives in a very bad way. But it is my responsibility to bring you this news, and I enjoy the opportunity to share it with you. Thank you so much for watching me today. Again, please contact me at 212-248-7907 if you need a consultation. You can schedule it also online through my website, which is www.rahmanlawpllc.com. And with that, I'll see you next time.